What's up, y'all? It's JS Method, or Coach JS, y'all may know me as, and today I have a really exciting video that I'm really excited to make called The Psychology of Improvement, the power of learning objectives, how to use them, why they work, what they actually do to your brain, and then some examples of good learning objectives and that kind of thing. So let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start by kind of illustrating your brain as two parts or two systems. There's this really good book I read about this that kind of described it as two systems. And you can kind of visualize it as like two different brains or two different people almost inside your own head. You have the first part, which is the subconscious part. Now, the subconscious part is the vast majority of your brain. It's constantly working. It's constantly, making sure your body's running. It's constantly taking in information from your surroundings. It's constantly performing. Now, it's the thing that keeps you alive. It's the thing that makes sure your body's working. It makes sure usually it's in control of your breathing and your stomach processing and all of these things. And it's constantly throwing us ideas to think about. And we don't really control this part, right? This is completely autonomous. The second part is the conscious part. And that's the part we normally think of as us and our thoughts. That's like the conscious part. And the conscious part it's a lot more logical. Right? So it's a lot more logical. It allows us to kind of think logically through problems. Logical. And that's kind of the part that we think problems through with. So we can kind of describe these two different parts, these two different like people inside of our brain as having different character traits. The first part is very, very feelings based. It's very intuitive based, right? Like our intuition is based in this. So it's very feeling based, and I'll say plus intuitive. It's very, very cheap. Like it's not very expensive. It doesn't take a lot to get our subconscious to run because it's constantly running. It's running while we sleep. It's running while we're not thinking. It's running while we're resting. It's running while we're working. It's running all of the time. So it's very, very cheap. Cheap plus efficient, right? It's very cheap and efficient, and it's very feeling based and intuitive based. The problem is it's not that logical. It doesn't have the ability to kind of reason. It has no reasoning skills. It has no ability to logically think through problems. So that's when the part two comes in. However, part two is kind of the opposite. Our conscious brain is logical and can reason, but is very expensive. It takes a lot to get our brain to actually reason through a problem. So kind of expensive. One way that we can illustrate this is if we think about a really hard math question, right? Let's say if I ask you 2 plus 2, your brain's going to instantly just shoot out 4, right? Because it's a very intuitive, very easy question that we kind of just know the answer to, right? And that would be an example of your subconscious being like, oh, it's 4. But if I give you a question like, I don't know, 378 plus 139, like this is a question that you wouldn't be able to kind of just shoot out an answer for, and you'd kind of have to work through it, right? And it's expensive. A lot of you won't even go through the work of getting through. Actually, this is kind of an easy question, but you get the point. The harder a problem is, the more it requires reasoning through it, the more it requires our second part to kind of hop in, but that part takes energy. It takes energy to kind of get your brain to actually solve this problem, where this problem takes no energy, right? Also, part one is incredibly quick. When I asked you what 2 plus 2 was, you probably immediately said 4. Where when I wrote out these questions, it probably took you a second if you did it at all, right? So part one is incredibly quick, incredibly efficient, but it's very intuitive based and can't reason. So very quick, incredibly efficient. Where our second brain is logical, it's expensive, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of mental energy, and it takes more physical energy, right? Because when you're reasoning through a problem and more of your brain is activated, it actually takes more physical energy and more calories as well. So it's very mentally and physically expensive. It's also slower. It's a lot slower, right? This is why when you touch something hot and you pull away from it, again, that's another example of part one. You don't have control and you're not thinking, oh, hey, this is hot, I should pull my hand away, right? That would be too slow. That would be an example of your conscious brain working. There's a reason we don't let a lot of our function through our conscious self. It's expensive and slow. But the hot feeling where you just touch and immediately pull back, and then you can kind of think back, oh, hey, that was hot. We're not going to touch that again. That's an example of our first part working. So the goal in League is to kind of work more and more of our game to be controlled by our subconscious part. League is such a broad game that a lot of it has to be handled by this first part anyways, right? You always have to worry about positioning and where you're going next and who you're playing around and what the win conditions are and should you trade and when to last hit and when to do this and when to do that and what item to buy and when are we going back and when are we roaming and when is dragon coming up and when is baron coming up, when is herald coming up. There's so much going on all of the time that there's not enough space in your conscious brain and you don't have enough energy in your conscious brain to actually go through it. And it's so slow that even if you could, you wouldn't want to, right? So the goal is to get the whole game to kind of just immediately respond in the subconscious. When you watch a really good player play, or if you yourself have had this experience of being in the flow state, and being kind of fully consumed and fully focused, that's an example of letting your subconscious kind of run the show and executing what you know and responding to stimuli very, very well, right? Like when you watch Faker play and he lanes and he positions really well and he does all these things really well, he's not thinking about, oh, I need to stand here because of this, and then I'm going to time his cooldown because of it. No, it just happens intuitively. That's an example of what System 1 is capable of, and that's what we want to train System 1 to do. However, when we begin, we have no clue. Like our System 1 has no correct intuition on how to play the game, right? Because it's a very complicated game. That's the power of learning objectives, and that's what we're going to get into on how to kind of overwrite our subconscious. So now a lot of people may be asking around this point is, so this is basically what autopilot is. And I want to be careful about that because yes, you can think about part 1 as kind of being the autopilot part of your brain. However, in League, when we use the term autopiloted, we usually mean unfocused. And if you're unfocused, it's going to hinder your part 1 thinking as well. So if you're highly focused and highly tuned in and have no thoughts, that would be an example of part 1 taking the show. That's what we want, right? That would be like a flow state. Where oftentimes we call someone autopiloted when they have Netflix on their second monitor and, you know, they have their dick in their hand and whatever. That's not the goal. That's low intensity. That's low focus. And that's often what we call autopilot. So I would be careful about calling this autopilot. This is more, you still want to be focused and in tune with the game. And then you want to let your subconscious intuitive self kind of at least start to run the show and be the lead. And then your conscious brain can interject when we have our learning objectives. Now, that's what a learning objective is going to be. It's going to be opportunities for our conscious brain, our system 2 part of our brain, to interject. So let's go ahead and talk about habits now. Now that we have those 2 characters in our head and we know we want our gameplay to be ingrained into that first character, we're going to talk about how to ingrain it. So we do this through habits. What is a habit? And what is a learning objective? So a habit, which is how System 1 works, by the way, it works on habits. A habit is some sort of stimulus, which causes us to do something, right? So it causes us to like stimulus into reaction to stimulus, right? This is how you can kind of think about it. Reaction. So something happens, we react to it. Another way you can, simpler words would be a trigger happens, and when that trigger happens, an action is done, right? An action is executed. So this is how we think of habits. And the same thing happens in League. This is how we develop that kind of thing. When they use their cooldown, we're going to initiate onto them, right? Because we have cooldown advantage. That's an example of how a good player learns how to capitalize on cooldown advantage. We talk about cooldowns as a fundamental. How do we get that wired into our brain? Well, we say, okay, this is my learning objective, right? Learning objective. We're like, okay, so since I'm new to the game and I'm trying to learn how cooldowns work, anytime enemy uses cooldown, then I'm going to kind of get my conscious brain involved and say, can I all in, right? can I all in? And this is an example of a really good learning objective. This is exactly how you can ingrain this into system 1. And after you focus on this for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, it takes a good amount of time, and system 1 gets really used to you kind of going through this habit. The more learning you do, the more practice you get on this, the more it becomes ingrained and the more it becomes feeling based rather than logical based. And then system one will start to take over. The enemy will use a cooldown and you'll react to it without even thinking, right? So that's the goal. And then we can move on to the next learning objective. So that's what a learning objective is. It's really just creating a habit or finding a habit in your gameplay that you want to add or a habit that you want to fix, and then adding a trigger. So whenever that trigger or whenever that stimulus happens, you can kind of say, okay, conscious brain, come involved now. Let's wire this in, right? So I'm going to give you an example of a bad learning objective and then compare it to another good one. So in the JS Academy, I had one of my clients say, okay, one of my learning objectives is playing slower. This is what he said was a learning objective. I'm writing in pink or red as bad, playing slow. And I'm like, what does this mean? When you go into your games and you say, I want to play slower, what are you actually doing? Right? It doesn't mean anything. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. I just generally play too fast. I play too aggressive. And I'm like, what does that mean? Because you don't just say, I'm going to play slower and then all of a sudden get better, right? Like that doesn't actually cause your gameplay to look any different. And then it definitely doesn't ingrain thoughts into your system 1. It definitely doesn't teach your rudimentary subconscious how to play the game, which is the goal. We're trying to teach our subconscious how to play this game. A better example of this, and you know, after a big conversation, I was kind of like, why do you think you want to play slower? What does that even mean? He was like, well, I trade too much. And whenever I see an opportunity, I go all in, even though it's not an opportunity. So I'm like, okay, well, you play Yone. An example of a good learning objective that you can kind of put into effect that will teach your subconscious how to play this game is, okay, every time Q3 is up, that's the trigger. Every time Q3 is up, Q3 is up. Then we're going to do some sort of action, something about it. Then we're going to bring in our conscious brain and ask, is there an 80% chance I kill, right? If I go in, blah, 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 80% kill, right? And now this is an example of, okay, now there's something that's happening. There's a stimulus that you want to get your conscious brain involved at. So every time Yone's Q3 is up, he's going to ask, okay, I can go in here and take this Q3. If I do, would there be an 80% chance I kill? If so, take it. If not, don't. And then over time, your subconscious brain will learn we do not take every Q3, right? We don't take every Q3. We kind of want to make sure we go through another check. And as you learn this check now becomes automatic. And you'll start to feel whether a Q3 is good or delusional. So that is an example of turning this really bad, poor, broad learning objective that doesn't mean anything into a very clear, concise gameplay objective that will teach our subconscious to play the game. That's the goal. We want to teach our subconscious to be better. And then once this becomes completely fine, it takes up less space in your mental stack and you can do it automatically because your first system, that subconscious first system, knows how to play. Then we move on to the next thing. What else is poor in your game, right? Why are you dying, right? Let's say you die a lot to ganks. Well now, or let's say you have bad map awareness and you want to start looking at your mini map more so you can start kind of reacting to tempo and reacting to things on the map more often. Well, another trigger and another learning objective we could have is every 5 seconds, I think I missed a letter. Yeah, I missed a C, that's fine. Every 5 seconds, look at minimap, right? This is another example. Look at minimap. Another example of a good learning objective. This will teach you that every 5 seconds while you're playing League, that you need to look at your minimap, look at your minimap, look at your minimap. And the way that you can do this, you can do it with an interval timer. If you just look up like 5-second interval timer and you hear a beep, you'll just boop, boop every 5 seconds, beep, 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 and you'll just keep looking at the minimap. Over time, you'll just look at the minimap without the beep because you know we need to look at our minimap all of the time, right? So that's another example of a good, clear, concise learning objective. Now, you go on to the next one when you could start to do this subconsciously and you feel your first system of your brain, that subconscious system, start to take over for you. So this is how you create really good learning objectives, and this is the goal of learning objectives. The goal is to teach your subconscious brain how to play. Because when we're playing really well, we want to just execute what we know. We don't want to be thinking too much. We want to just let our kind of brain respond. And it's faster and it's cheaper in terms of, brain power and all of that. So really think about teaching your subconscious self how to play and having really clear, concise learning objectives. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a little bit more about psychology and that kind of thing. I plan on having some more of these videos, and we're actually doing a mental and spiritual course in the JS Academy in relation to League of Legends. I might upload some of those sessions. So if you guys are interested in that, check out the JS Academy. The links are always in the description. It's a group coaching platform ran by me. Other than that, I really appreciate you guys hanging out. If you want to see any other videos, leave what you'd like to see in the comments. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.